Welcome back to Asking for a Friend, Conversations with Kate, the questions we're too afraid to ask. The first thing I need to mention before we even get started today is that I will be changing the name of the podcast. So in keeping with the work that I have previously done with my books and my TED Talk and where I want to pivot and move forward in building a community of strong, empowered women, I think it is probably important to change the name of the podcast to keep in line with all of that. So as those people who've read my books would know, the books were called Drop the Act. Both books were titled Drop the Act. And our community is also called Drop the Act. And so I think it's only fitting that we rename the podcast Drop the Act. So if you're listening and you see the podcast labeled something different and our upcoming podcast will be labeled Drop the Act, at least you know why and you'll understand. So that's my first point that I wanted to share with everybody today. I would love to welcome back Mandy to the podcast.
Thank you.
You're becoming a regular.
Sucker.
How exciting for you. I mean, what better do you have to do on a Wednesday evening after a day of work?
A bath, bed, movie. But anyway.
That can wait.
Okay.
That can be your reward for all the wisdom you're about to share with us here today. So lately we have been talking about the idea of narcissism. So often you and I both find that we're very energetically connected, and a lot of the experiences that you go through often mirror the experiences I go through, which is often very common in a relationship where you mirror each other. And, you know, that's probably a big part of why two souls come together and the healing path and the healing journey. But we have said before that we seem to have found ourselves surrounded by many experiences of what we see as narcissistic traits or narcissistic behaviours. Now, the first thing I want to say is that, like some other terms in psychology, some other diagnoses, the term narcissism or narcissist has really become a buzzword these days. I think it's a term that people throw around very, very commonly, very easily. It's not uncommon for people to come and see me and they've already labelled their partner a narcissist, or their mum's a narcissist, or their dad's a narcissist. And I just want to make it clear that everything we talk about today is in no way a diagnosis of anyone in particular. We are certainly talking about traits of narcissism, and I think probably what we will be able to share today is quite a different view of a narcissist or narcissistic traits than what many people embrace in terms of their understanding of what a narcissist is and who they think a narcissist might be. So that's what we are going to talk about today.
Yeah, well, I think that even like ADHD and all the diagnoses of that psychologists or doctors now give people, like back in the day when I was growing up, I'd never heard of the word, even ADHD. I have ADHD and I think it's a great trait because I have so much energy and I can do so much. I don't think of it as a bad thing, but when you say the word narcissist, it sounds like a really bad thing.
It does. It does. And it really comes with that. Well, when you say a narcissist or you think of someone as a narcissist, what's the energy that you feel from that?
Yeah, well, the word to me feels like it's a person that is really mean and I don't want to be around them.
Yeah. Like we tend to see them as abusers, bad, you know, it's a really bad label to, you know, sort of apply to somebody. And, you know, I think that just that that perception that we have immediately triggers a victim energy of the person identifying this narcissistic traits, and there's a real energy dynamic to that. And I think we're going to talk a bit more about that and why we think we attract certain things into our life. And so something I learned in psychology many, many years ago was the concept of do not be intimidated by a diagnosis. Let go of the label and really look at symptoms and traits, because that's where, if you target people's symptoms, their traits, their behaviours, their thought patterns, that's actually where you can lean in and really help people. So I'm not a fan of labelling. And like we said, it has become the super, cool thing to self-diagnose, or for the layperson to throw around these labels. And I see that in particular with a lot of people in the younger generation. And I think that social media has a lot to do with that. There's a lot of information on social media, and I think that is as good as it can be bad. It is positive and negative. There is certainly much more understanding and awareness because the information is so readily available, through the layperson demonstrating what traits of ADHD look like, or, borderline personality or narcissism, what it looks like. But I think that has swung to the other extreme, where you've got, the layperson thinking that they can go around diagnosing people and, almost making psychologists redundant. I have had many a young person come in with the view they have already self-diagnosed, and even if I was to challenge that diagnosis, they refute my challenge because they've already decided. And it's a fine line between awareness and boxing yourself into a label, where we see some people are using that almost as like the excuse or a bit of a badge of honor. So that's, I think, the first thing to be aware of, that we are really overloaded with a lot of information, and really to achieve a diagnosis, there really is a strict set of rules, a list of traits and criteria that have to be met to really, achieve a personality disorder diagnosis. So
let's say, do you ever get anyone come in and say, I'm a narcissist?
So that's a really interesting point. I was thinking about that today when I knew that we would be doing this podcast, and I have never once diagnosed someone with narcissism. Now, when I look back, and I've been doing this for nearly 30 years, I don't believe that's because I've never seen a narcissist. I think that probably earlier on in my career, I was somewhat naive to a narcissist, and that's part of the narcissistic traits, is that there is often a projection of such charm and a real cover to, some of the behaviours that maybe exist underneath the surface. But I think that probably also many people that have those traits don't necessarily seek out treatment. They are not usually the people who want to get help or are having trouble in terms of their own traits and their own behaviours. It is most often the people who are in the relationship of some sort with the person with those traits that come along to treatment. They describe certain behaviours and patterns, and I can see those traits and identify those traits. But again, you can't diagnose someone without actually having interviewed and assessed the individual. So I don't believe I've had a lot of contact with people with narcissistic traits, but I would go as far to say that even if I have, that I think that probably, particularly in my earlier years as a psychologist, I have missed that and been naive to that, because it's not necessarily easy to pick it from, a removed point of contact with the individual, it is often through the stories that other people describe that you can pick.
It comes out in relationships because it's around abandonment, isn't it? It's around that. So it's not going to come out in someone unless they're in a relationship with someone. But it's like you'll get people come to you that have ADHD because they want to know how they can ground themselves and stay a bit more balanced, and ways that they can, whether they want medication or, like, I'm so against medication because of my beliefs, but you're not going to get anyone that comes to you for help for that. I think you would know the main reason for that as well.
Well, with that sort of personality structure, they don't see their actions as a problem. Other people on the other end are the ones that are experiencing the problems, but that's part of the feature of their functioning, is that they build a very well constructed ego pattern to keep themselves safe. And whilst ever they feel safe, they don't see their behaviour and actions as problematic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is a deep-seated fear at the very core of that they're not willing to look at. So they protect that so well that I think even on a conscious level, they don't recognise that their behaviour is problematic. But I thought it was interesting to start with where the word narcissism actually comes from. So it's an ancient Greek myth of Narcissus, the Greek god of Narcissus. So according to the myth, Narcissus was an extraordinarily handsome young man who rejected the love of others. As punishment, he became captivated by his own reflection in a pool of water. Unable to look away, he wasted away, consumed by the image he believed was someone else. In many versions of the story, he dies beside the pool, and a narcissus flower grows where he fell. So it goes on to say that the story is often misunderstood as simply being about vanity. But at a deeper level, it's about being trapped by an image rather than living in authentic relationship. So Narcissus was not truly in love with himself. He was captivated by an illusion he couldn't connect with or possess.
Yeah, wow. How true.
Yeah.
So well, this is from our experiences that like just sums up with what we've seen.
Well, that's, what we were talking about is that, one of the common things that we perceive a narcissist to be is someone who loves themselves, just totally idolizes themselves and has this grandiose perception of themselves and who they are. And that's actually not the truth of what's happening at the core. At the core of what's happening is they are trapped in a false identity, which is there to protect themselves from that feeling of not being able to love and connect with themselves. So at a deeper level, it's such a disconnection. And then the ego forms as like a concrete structure. We talk about the ego and how the ego forms as a protection from our deep wounds and our pains. And I feel like the narcissist or the traits of a narcissist build an ego that's like a double brick wall that is protecting them from a deep-seated fear and shame of who they are at the core, which I can actually feel is such a sad thing.
Yeah. Well, I think that the people that I know, like deep down, it's like really sad that they feel like that. But when you're the victim, the victim is the person that wants to, all the people that would come to you, all the situations that we know of, they want to call them out and they want to blame them for that person making them feel certain ways. And it's just like putting fuel on a fire. That's exactly what they're trying to get, to feel safe, and so they don't have to face their fears.
Well, again, they're functioning with this huge wall of protection, and you've got this person who essentially is really energetically trying to break down that wall. And so you can see how the dynamic becomes this toxic circular pattern that people can't get out of, because the narcissist has no interest in breaking down that wall. They are protecting that at all cost. And the person on the other side is there trying to help them chip away at it and chip away at it and chip away at it. And
trying to rescue them.
And we often say that these people show up as a no-win situation, that no matter what you do, that there is never going to be the rescue. There's never going to be the awareness, the understanding, the reflection, the light bulb moments for that person, because there is no intention at all to ever work at breaking down that wall.
They have to crash and burn themselves.
So when we look at, again, like you said, this shows up so much in relationships. And, why is it that relationships bring this to the surface? And, we've seen the energy dynamic. We've both been in energy dynamics with different people in our lives and our families, whereby there's this battle that's where I have felt it's a battle to try and, connect or get to that core, and there's such a lesson, so many lessons in that for the me person, the person on the other side. Yeah. I mean, here I am automatically assuming I am not the narcissist. I mean, I have been known to say at times like, oh my gosh, that is so selfish, Kate. Am I the narcissist? Am I? Tell me honestly if I am. But I think that's one of the criteria. If you can ask yourself whether you're the narcissist, that probably means you're not the narcissist. So let's talk about the people who often end up in the relationship of some sort, or this dynamic, this toxic dynamic with the person with these traits. And
it is mainly males.
More prevalent in males.
Would you say that you would, men are the more narcissist and women are more borderline?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think so. And in my experience, yes.
But they're very similar traits and patterns.
So, let's talk about why we think it shows up in men more.
Yeah.
So there is a real pattern, and this is a societal pattern that we really want to believe we're working at, and I don't know how much ground we're making, but society, which includes, our parenting of young little boys, we reward strength, toughness, emotional toughness, winning. What else do we reward in men? We reward
strength,
and we reward and
success.
Definitely success and winning. So when we reinforce those messages subconsciously, the little boy develops the understanding that I am not accepted for who I am in the purity of just me. I am accepted for these behaviours, and that is where the ego patterns start to develop.
Yeah.
I am loved and accepted if I win, if I am superior, if I'm strong, if I'm dominant, if I'm maybe overpowering. So when that is rewarded, and whether that is rewarded intentionally or unintentionally, the messaging that's received from the young, might not always be males, but by the young male in this situation, is that that's where the programming starts, right? And so when the programming starts, where their little mind is interpreting their sense of love and belonging through the eyes of these patterns and behaviours, then they are more likely to lean into them, and they're more likely to develop those patterns of behaviour. And not all patterns of behaviour of strength and power and is narcissism, but when that is rewarded and reinforced in our society, then you can see how these patterns can develop. How much space do we provide for little boys to be open-hearted, to be soft, to be loving, to be nurturing? You know, we're still in a time where kids are called, you know, gay if they show feelings and emotions, or they're soft, or they're pussies, or they're, I mean, we go and we watch the footy every weekend, and that behaviour is on display on steroids when you're at a footy game. And until we can really see that that is part of what feeds into these patterns, then we continue to breed little kids who believe that that's the way that they need to show up in the world, and they don't know any different.
No.
And again, it's rewarded. It's rewarded in sport. It's rewarded in career and profession. And then they get into a relationship and it's not rewarded at all. And this is where the conflict erupts. And, you know, I can see how when we have females who then start to say to these males, this is abusive, you know, this is control, this is manipulation, that they have no understanding that that is that's maybe how this behaviour is perceived, because it's always been rewarded and perhaps reinforced, because we know that there's still such a huge percentage of male over women that achieve high-level positions in power and who climb the corporate ladder, and that there's still that, you know, advantage that men have. So it is rewarded in so many areas of their life. And then their partner comes along and says, hey, I've got some insight in for you. This is not working for me, yet it is worked for them in every area of their life. So, you know, in comes the conflict, right? So can we also talk about, because I think it's interesting to really understand that any dynamic can only exist when two people play a part. So no matter what traits you identify in someone else, and whether you want to label it or not, those traits can only work in becoming toxic or problematic if the other person in the situation is also coming in with traits and ego patterns that clash.
Well, they feed off each other, I don't think they clash. I think they attract.
They attract on a soul level in order to,
and then they
mirror, show for it to be on display. But the surface level is clashing, right? You're not behaving in the way I want you to behave. I'm now behaving in a way you don't want me to behave. And we have this conflict that exists like at a human level, but at a soul level, there's learnings in that for both individuals. So often the female, and it's again, not always, you know, males being the more narcissistic types and females, but it is stereotypically often like that. So when we see the females who feed into these and attract these personalities into their life, what are the traits that we see that these females have? Because the powerful, domineering, controlling male individual typically does not attract the powerful, controlling, dominating female.
Well, the peacemakers and
they're the fixers, they're the rescuers, they're the, I see potential in you, and I can save you. I can fix you. I not only can fix you, but it is so good for my sense of self-worth if I can be in a relationship where I'm actively working at fixing someone.
Because they are very loving and they make you feel safe.
So, yeah, there's an aspect of, there's the love bombing, right?
Yeah.
Where it's all wonderful and amazing and probably like over the top love and affection until we settle in, and you settle in and you see some of the, the other traits come to the surface a bit more. But I think it's very important to identify the fact that if you are in a dynamic like this, you are in it for your own reasons too. So when the perfect partner for the narcissist is the people pleaser, the kind, the empathetic, the sympathetic, the rescuer, the fixer, the all-round accepting, unconditional acceptance.
Yeah.
Now, they all sound like really lovely behaviours and traits and characteristics. However, when you carry through your own ego patterns and your own trauma experiences an unusually unhealthy desire to fix, help, rescue another person, then you're in this in a way that is serving your own need too.
Yeah.
Because your desire to fix and help and rescue is serving your sense of self-worth and your deeper, need to be needed. And that's a trauma pattern that I think a lot of females carry. Yeah. And when those two come together, wow, we have some really good therapy on the table here. But it's often getting caught in this pattern where typically we see the female is the person who wants to try and remove themselves, or how are they, how are they going to get out of this mess that they found themselves in. But until the female sees the patterns that they are contributing and enabling this dynamic, then there's no healing and no growth for them either. And we see them, continue to attract these people time and time again, whether it's relationship 1 or 2 or sister, brother, whoever it is. These, you will continue to attract what you need. But I think I said to you before we started this that the narcissist is not in a dynamic to love. They are in a dynamic to see how many boundaries they can cross. So again, it's the perfect match, isn't it, for someone who has very poor boundaries, because they're so willing to throw themselves wholeheartedly and openly into something and be the rescuer and the fixer but again, it's about recognizing that they are your patterns that are creating an opening for this dynamic to exist.
Well, I think we spoke last time around such a generational gap, and I remember when Emmett was young and he was crying because Emmett's very sensitive, and he was crying, and my dad said to him, "Stop crying, you sook," or something like that. And I said, "Don't you ever tell him to stop crying, Emmett. You can cry whenever you want to cry." And I didn't even know any of this stuff, but it was just a motherly instinct straight away that you can cry and you can be like, that's okay, that's normal.
Yeah.
And that was like, he must have been 3 or 4. And I look back now and go, wow, that was quite wise from me that didn't know any wisdom before.
But add it in there.
I come from dad that was very controlling and dominant, and mum's a peacemaker, and often different families had one or the other, but it was just such a known thing. And then we go back 100 years and it was the women are just there to have babies and do the housework and look after kids, and the man is a breadwinner, and that gives him such a strength and control and purpose in life. And the women have a purpose but it's the times have changed so much. So we're going through, which is why now we're having because women are now, which is what your circle is about, is empowering other women, because we are strong. The things that we can do, and our knowledge and our wisdom and the strength that we have is something that people have never, I think, recognised. Like even the women's football, like they're now playing rugby league, and the men are full time and they get paid a shit ton, but and the girls are still working, but it's starting to close that, and in 2 years' time the girls will be professional. So such a big generational gap there. But the other thing I wanted to say is, I know you talked about boundaries, and they are often with people that don't have strong boundaries. And I only spoke to Joe and Steph about this the other day, but ideally, when we get to a stage where we've done so much healing on ourselves and found so much within ourselves, and we become whole within ourselves, we shouldn't have to have boundaries. So what is your thoughts of that?
Okay, so I know what you mean about that, and I think it's important to clarify, because I think people will find that a little confusing. So when we talk about boundaries, we're often talking about physical, sort of boundaries. So when conscious boundaries. So when people find themselves in a relationship with, someone, and they're not coping with a certain behaviour or a way that a certain person acts because it's triggering them, then often what we look to do is assert a boundary, a conscious boundary. So I'm not talking to you. I will not be in your space anymore, which can bypass the most important part, which is first and foremost having a look at what is the trigger that's coming up from you that this person is just being a teacher for.
Yeah.
So this is where we go back to forget the label, forget what you call it. They are just performing and doing them. And if you are looking at how do I set a boundary, then sometimes what we're doing is we're saying, I'm not coping with this, so I'm going to physically create a boundary so that I don't have to feel this. And that is not doing the work on yourself.
Yeah.
I think what my understanding of what you're describing is that when we do the work on ourselves and we can heal the triggers that come up for us, we are then able to be in the company or in the space of a person who demonstrates behaviours that we don't like, we don't accept, we don't tolerate, but it's about energetically not attaching and not taking that on board.
Yeah.
So for me, it's more a boundary is how do I protect my energy space from the energy I can see happening over there with that person. That I think is what we want to get to with having boundaries. Boundaries is about what I will let into my energy system.
Yeah.
and what I won't. And the only way you can do that is to work on the energy trigger that has come up for you. So when, one of the terms that I've heard people use, and sometimes I come across these terms, I'm sure that they come up on TikTok or whatever, but my clients often use the terms and then I have to ask them so empathetic abuse. So we know a lot of people, as we describe, people pleasers and all the fixers, and often are high in empathy.
Yeah.
So they have quite a high ability to energetically connect with the other person's experience. They can feel the feelings and emotions that someone else might be going through. They have a high potential to empathize, which is being able to put themselves in someone else's position and have compassion for that. Now, if you don't know how to have a boundary with your compassion, you are an open book to get walked all over.
Yeah.
So boundaries, I think, is about having an awareness that I see the deeper part of what's happening for you over there. However, I am responsible for what I allow into my energy field, because you can have compassion for someone, and if you don't know how to sort of have the reins on that or have boundaries on that, your compassion can be a direct pathway into wanting to rescue. I don't want you to feel like that. I understand, that this pain is going on for you. So then I am so accepting and understanding of all the behaviors and all the patterns. And so when we don't have a boundary for our compassion, then we're very open for our empathy to being abused. But that is something that the empathetic person, the empathetic individual, has to take the reins over. That's one of the lessons I think that's there for all the empaths, is you have to learn how to manage your own energy and how you energetically, or you have more control over what energy you let into your own energy system.
And with that comes great strength and resilience within.
Absolutely.
The other thing is that narcissistic people are very good at feeling your boundary, and then they know how to get through that boundary.
Yeah.
And it repeats and then it repeats, and then you get to a stage where it's like.
So what do you think is the energy behind when someone is so driven to, it's like a constant test, right? I see your boundary, you've put up a boundary, and I think on the inside they go, haha, beauty, game on. Well, let's see how I can get around this boundary, walk all over this boundary, smash this boundary. What is the driving force for the individual that wants to always cross the boundary?
As in the narcissist? Yeah, so as soon as they feel that boundary, it actually gives them a bit of energy. Like it fuels them.
Yeah.
And so they will find another way in, and that's why they're so good at the love bombing or doing something nice for you. And as soon as they do something nice, then you go, so as soon as they do something nice, once they've felt you have a boundary, they will then do or say or something nice, and then that will, I was about to say something, but it's gone. So then
they're back into the energy.
Yeah.
So
they pop up.
I think when what you're describing is it's this game.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a game of fueling the energy fire. So think about a battery, right? A battery that always wants to stay charged. So when you withdraw your energy, which means you're not reacting, you're not responding, you're not giving them positive energy, negative energy, no energy, I think they have a term for this called black rock or grey rock or something like that. So when you show up as the grey rock and you give no energy, then their energy in their battery drains. There's no charging system to recharge the battery. So the crossing of the boundary, it's a bit like the poking and prodding. I feel like that game gives them energy.
Yeah.
And then once they get in and they can feel that there's some energy coming from you, that fuels it's like the instant recharge to the battery. It fuels their energy system. It gives them that alive, which is, we can say is either a sense of control or a sense of power or a sense of grandiosity. But essentially what it does is it just fuels their energy system.
Yes. What I was going to say is what I can feel is that once they get back in, they're just so clever. Because once they get back in, it's like the empathetic person will then think, that worked.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just fixed them.
Yeah.
And then they know other ways. They're so clever.
So, well, again, that's the play off the two. Yeah. So they are very clever at, they hit a brick wall.
Yeah.
So they just go looking for another entry. And this is where we see people say that, we can go from the love bombing, then they get frozen out, they, it can be abuse, it can be withdrawal. It's like they just have all the bag of tricks, right? So they look for a different entry system. And the empathetic person is just, it's like, I can only speak for myself, but I feel like I have a never-ending supply of empathy. And you can work on having boundaries to not share that empathy. But there's a hole somewhere. There's a gap in my system somewhere, and eventually they find the way in. And like you said, the empathetic person says, the boundary works. They're so much better.
And there are people also that are very forgiving. The empathetic person.
Empathetic people are extremely forgiving.
That's such a circle of abuse. And until they are a no-win situation. And and I think even by calling them out on it, there will be justifications. They know how to justify, and they know how to manipulate. So they're kings and queens of doing that. But the most important thing for the empathetic person that is with a narcissist is just fucking work on your own stuff. Mm-hmm. And if you are meant to be there, you'll be there. It's going to give you, it's such a powerful tool. Such a powerful tool to have one of those people in your life, because they will change your life. They will strengthen every part of your soul and give you so much strength and resilience to be whole.
So can I just go back for a second to forgiving, and let's again go back to the dynamic of the highly empathetic person forgiving the narcissistic person. So the empathetic person thinks that they're forgiving the behaviour of the narcissist, mm-hmm. and in their mind, they're going to learn from that.
Yeah.
And they're going to not repeat the same. So, the empathetic person thinks that the work that they've done, whether it's putting up a boundary or whatever it is, has created some sense of change, which is actually still the pattern of the empathetic person at play. Still wanting to fix, still wanting to, make them different but the the narcissistic person is receiving the forgiveness as just a green light for the energy game and the energy battle to continue. They are not receiving that as some self-reflection where there is motivation to break down that wall, because remember, they are absolutely committed beyond anything else to maintaining the image.
Yeah.
And the image is their safe zone, and there is so much fear deep down for them to dive into anything that's vulnerable. It's like they have such a fragile sense of belief in themselves, like in their own heart and their own soul. So their commitment to that ego is like rock solid, right? So we talk about forgiveness. The empathizer has to learn what forgiveness actually is. And forgiveness has to stop being seen through the lens of, I forgive you for your action because now we will improve. And that has to shift back to, I forgive myself for abandoning myself for someone else. I forgive myself for giving away my energy to someone who doesn't respect it. I forgive myself for all the things, and then actually learning how to put down the weight that they've carried through these experiences, which is what we say forgiveness is, right? It's not about anyone else. It's about you. It's about how you let go, how you put down what you've been carrying from this experience, and then how you learn to stop going back into the energy battle.
Yeah.
Because forgiveness, I think, is often this mind trick that is part of the game that we get stuck in. Forgive, repeat, forgive, repeat, forgive, repeat, forgive, repeat.
Yeah, if you're the empathetic person, if you are forgiving them, then they do it again, you haven't done the work. So I'm not going to say you deserve everything you get, but you do.
That's meant in her black and white manner.
Just being honest.
How would I say that? I would say, well, you walk back into the same trap, and you
I've done it.
You don't yet know any different, and there's still learning to be had. So yes, we're going to go back around until you learn something different. And the hardest part for the empathizer is to really get to the point where I think there is just radical acceptance that this individual is who they are. These are their traits. These are their patterns. I have understanding and compassion for where that comes from for them. However, that is not the excuse that I will continue to use to keep going back into this cycle. I have to work on my stuff. Like you said, I will continue to attract that if I continue to use my empathy as the excuse of why I end back in the same cycle. So when I think it's a massive lesson in learning how to control your empathy. I have so many people who are empaths that say to me that they can't help it. They just feel for them. They can't help it. They just feel. Yeah. And, that's something that is one of the greatest lessons on the table here is learning how to maintain empathy and not actually just shut yourself off.
Well, I think both of us can say that we are both very empathetic people and have been taken advantage many a time.
Many, 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 many. I mean, I'm an expert. What do you want to know, guys? Send me questions. I've got examples for anything and everything you could ask me.
Well, that was a much nicer way than my way.
Yeah. I mean, if we were a professional podcast, like say we were, Kyle and Jackie O, they'd be beeping you out. Like, you know how they have to have a 30-second delay? Beep, beep. You can't say that. You can't say that. You're Kyle. Beep. And I'm Jackie. I'm the softener.
Oh, Jackie's my favourite.
Yeah.
I'm going to meet her one day.
Well, who knows, hey? The universe may deliver. But I think that it is such an important topic to talk about for so many reasons.
So stop blaming the narcissist, because when you blame them, you are just allowing them to keep doing it.
Well, not only are you allowing them to keep doing it, but you are bypassing the patterns that you have that allow this dynamic to work.
Yeah.
Because you are responsible for your own energy, your own feelings. And when you learn those lessons and you learn how to strengthen that and, you know, share your empathy in a much more productive way in this world, then you will not get caught in the trap of being taken advantage of.
Yeah, and I think that one thing that we use is, whether it's a narcissist or borderline, whoever, when someone brings up an energy in us, just to remove ourselves from the ego. The ego Mandy's sitting there and she feels what she feels, but removing myself and just watching my ego patterns and what I feel, how it makes me feel, where it's coming from. And I think when you can do that and not blame that person for making you feel a certain way, that it's just a light bulb moment.
Well, everything starts to shift, doesn't it? You have the ability then to break away from the ego patterns that are there as a protection method to keep us safe, but they keep us small.
Yeah.
And, you know, we say no one can hurt you, they can only hurt your ego.
Yeah.
So, you know, the I need to be needed and I need to be the fixer is an ego pattern.
Yeah.
And so when someone rejects my help, they're not actually hurting me, my soul, they're hurting that ego. So when you can see that and you can actually take a step back and see that you are not your ego, I say constantly, and I mean for anyone that's been watching my reels, me and George and our breakups, seriously, I am not my mind, I just have one. Learning to separate yourself from the things that your mind creates and learning to not believe everything that your mind creates, knowing that your mind has created those patterns and those protection structures, which come in the form of thoughts and beliefs. And our mind has done that as a protective mechanism, because it's, if I can stay safely inside this ego pattern, you can't get to my deep wounds. You can't hurt me.
Yeah.
But when we actually realize that, yes, we all develop those because we didn't know any better when we're young. That's how the human mind works. But when you're big and you start to learn that you are actually able to take control of your mind, and whether you want to agree with everything your mind says and does, and when you can remove yourself from that and see that there's a difference between me and my soul versus my mind. So someone can do or say something to me, they can only hurt some ego formation that is constructed from the mind. So when you can step back from that and allow yourself to not attach to that and dive into that and get sucked into that, we come back to that sense of being whole. I am whole in who I am. And George, my mind, well, he's the one that creates all the problems. So when George says, you can't treat me like that, you should respect me, you should be so grateful for everything I've done to help you, that's just George.
Yeah.
Getting on his high horse with the story, but you connect back to your heart and soul, and, you know, we are all whole. We're just too caught up in the mind.
Yeah. Well, I think there is so many divorce. I don't know, like even your podcast, I think the divorce episodes, like, get the
divorce and separation.
Yeah.
Cha-ching. Tick, 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 tick. Everyone seems to love it. I mean, I don't know why. Tell me why you guys love to hear about separation. I think every time the word separation, which is what actually inspired me to do the breakup series with George, is people seem to be attracted to information around separation. And I mean, it's a big thing in our society these days.
Yeah, and
I mean, who hasn't been separated at least once or twice?
my mum and dad.
Yeah, weirdos.
Well, I think that, as I was saying earlier, the generational gap, and like you just stay and everyone gets their 50th wedding anniversary. But there's so many people separating now because of people not tolerating the behaviour. But I think that what happens is, I know that it's too hard, I'm out, because you haven't done the work. So then they're out, and then I'll move on to someone else, and then they attract exactly the same person. They don't do the same things. They do the same energetically, but not the same physically. So they go through it again.
Yeah.
And again.
The amount of times people have said to me, so I thought this one was different. And then we're dealing with the same sort of underlying patterns. Like I said, they might show up in human form a little differently. So the way the person carries out these patterns might be different, but the energy battle or the energy exchange issue is still there. So how do you know when a relationship is run its course and it's time to go versus staying here because this is a great teacher for me? Where do you draw the line?
Yeah, I'm actually, this is a question that I listened to Michael Singer answer to someone as well. But for what I believe and what I feel is that while ever there's still a connection and there's that deep love in the heart space, I think once you've done the work, and if you get to a stage where there's just nothing, and you get to a stage where whatever they say or do doesn't affect you and you don't care, then I think you're done. But if it's still, if you do the work, you can have the compassion, the forgiveness for yourself, and you can see their patterns and how they are, and you learn energetically not to react. That will ripple. If they want to grow on a deeper level, that will ripple to them, and you'll both start to grow and your relationship will become stronger. If it does not become stronger, then it served its